In Kenya's Choice 2022. Franklin Mkwanja is still here, Executive Director, CMD, Joy Mdivo, Advocate of the High Court. Professor Aman Manyora is also here, political commentator. Prof, you wanted to respond before we took a break.
You see, Trevor, lawyers are very interesting. They can be very mechanistic, very mechanistic, and the way they say the law is very clear. And then they proceed to argue.
To complicate it.
Badly.
To make it unclear.
Yeah, very unclear in the process.
Yeah.
You see, the fact that Chebukati or the chairman will announce the results is not in dispute. And it is well grounded. I have explained that if it wasn't that clear, then that lady would have announced Raila and then Chebukati announces Ruto, and you are now causing trouble in the... Law does not, whether clear or unclear, does not operate in a vacuum. You get what I'm saying? Therefore, it is not just the facts that may be very simple, like you said during the break. People are not agreeing over simple mathematics. It's not that. It's not the clarity of the law. It's not the math. It is the perception. It is what could plunge the country into chaos. Listen, in 2007, we got ourselves in trouble. Then we gave ourselves a constitution. And we said, okay, fine, now we have a place to go when there's a dispute. So faithfully, Raila went to the Supreme Court. His prayers were not granted, as my friend here would say. So the petition was dismissed. Arguments have been made about it. That's not what I'm talking about. In 2017, and I want people to listen carefully, those who are watching and listening, including Trevor. In 2017, Raila went to the same court. The court nullified the election, but it stopped at a point it ought to have started. So that they are now asking Raila to go back for a rerun with the same set of affairs, with the same individuals, everything the same, that messed, without even sanctioning any of them. And Raila said he was not going to the next election. People moved to court now to challenge aspects of the repeat election. We all know what happened, including a court not sitting when it's supposed to sit, that judges could not make it to the Supreme Court. Kenyans seem to forget that. Now I want to ask Kenyans to listen to me carefully. You are now taking Kenya back to the pre-Supreme Court days. This is very important. Let us not drive Kenyans into getting to a position where now they say the Supreme Court will not help us. That's where we are heading now. We must be extremely careful. And therefore, that's why I'm saying the issues that were being raised during the dying moments before the announcement are issues that can cause trouble in the country. It's on the basis of that I was saying leadership would have demanded of Chebukati that he calls a meeting of the commission the following day. Now, in this meeting, I'm not saying that they will compel him to do what he thinks is not right as a returning officer. But you give time for people to ventilate and ask them tough questions, such as have been raised this morning here. These are my figures. We were verifying these things together. What are these issues you wanted us to deal with when in the process of verification there were no issues for us to deal with? So we have the figures here. Can you give me a good reason why I can't announce William Ruto, the president-elect? That you are taking care of the temperatures in the country. You're not even doing a matter of law or this is the procedure with IBC. No. You are looking at the country at large and knowing the temperatures must be contained. That's what I'm talking about. In any case, even with the question of law, when someone goes to court, the person he sues majorly is IBC, not Chebukati. Chebukati is just one of them. But the main person you are suing for conducting an election badly is IBC. So finally, it will still come back to IBC. And when it gets back to IBC, there's no way you run away from those 4 commissioners. That is how it works. Because if I petition, I am petitioning against the body that ran the election, which according to me, didn't do a good job. And I'm complaining, and I have my facts before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is listening to the defense from IBC, not Chebukati, IEBC. So you are coming full circle to the 4 commissioners and the entire commission. So it's important, in my thinking, that we do things with moderation. A question of who becomes president, to me, is not as important as the security of the country and the peace in the country. The peace in the country, to me, is much more important. And that's why I said, even if it means going to the Supreme Court to seek an extension, so that you say, because of the stalemate I have with my commission, I'm not able to announce these elections today, and today is the constitutional deadline. I'm moving here perhaps under what they might call the doctrine of extreme, what do you call it, necessity, or whatever it is. Can you assist us? Because of this stalemate, I'm reluctant and unable to announce the results today. Can you give us 3 more days to resolve our issue as a commission? That to me will be even a better way. Some people may say you are creating more attention. It must as well be. But caution to me is much better than hurrying through a process that plunges the country into chaos.
Yeah. There's a question here from CPA Kirwa. I believe this is for both of you, Prof. and Joy. CPA Kirwa says, how I wish Prof. could have also taken the simple calculator over the Form 34As. The question is, are there serious issues admissible in court to build a case over the results so announced?
You see, CPA Kirwa is missing the point. We said here a short while ago, it's not as simple as the law states Chebukati will declare. It's not as simple as taking a calculator. Politics is about perceptions. You want to avoid the perception that there's some monkey business going on. That's what I'm talk about. It's not just a calculator. If it's a calculator, you don't even need those decimal points. Just prove these are the voters who voted. Then take a ruler and put this is 7 million. If you cross it, you are the winner. If you don't cross it, you have not won. It's as simple as that. But that's not what I'm talking about. That is being simplistic. I'm saying it's not as simple as saying Chebukati has the power to declare.
Okay.
Neither is it as simple as saying it is just a calculator. Okay. I'm saying once you have built the perception around IBC at Bomas, there is something fishy going on, you have to deal with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Joy, the Supreme Court will rise above the politics. They will not deal with the perceptions. They will deal with hardcore evidence, right? And
in fact, I'm wondering why Prof is insisting on perceptions, because perceptions are as subjective as the perceivers. It's indeterminate. It's not something that you can put hard and fast. Like, for example, I've turned up in this blue top today. If it was pre-election, now it would have been, oh, Joy, now is in Azimio, or what is it? That is perception. It is completely irrational. It is totally subjective. But the voting process was actually meant to deliver an ambiguous result. Chebukati would need to go to the Supreme Court, maybe, if the situation arose where he needed to seek an extension of time beyond the 7 days, if he did not have anything to tell Kenyans. If there was no result, if maybe the verifying process was taking too long, if there was too many Form 34s that had not come back, that he could not make a decision. Because remember, the same law says, if he has enough to perceive what Kenyans are saying, even if all the tallies have not yet come in, but what has not yet come in is not enough to shift the eventual outcome, it still gives him the leeway to go ahead and announce the results, because the law envisages a situation where maybe not all the results can be in, but the time is running out. So does he have enough to make a proper decision based on what he has on his table? The law gives him that leeway for a reason. So when the Constitution tells you you must announce within 7 days, I don't see anywhere in that law where there is the process of even enlarging that time. So Chebukati had a ticking, he had a ticking clock. That's one. Secondly, the process of verifying the bottom line, the final figure, is how you determine an election outcome. It's numbers. It's nothing else. It is numbers. How many voted for? How many voted against? In Kenya, we don't even have the complicated electoral college system like they have in the States, where it's not just the numbers. There's also which states have got more electoral college votes than others. So you're looking at 2 variables. No, with us, it is just the numbers. The only variables is, have you met 25% in at least half of the counties? And do you have 50 plus 1? If you answer those two in the affirmative and you have the most number of votes, we declare you the winner. That is what our law says. So it is true that there is a very large chunk of the voters who did not vote according to how Chebukati announced. And that is an outcome of an election. And that's why even the BBI was saying, you know what, this thing for first past the post, maybe we need to have a discussion about it. That's a separate discussion. As of now, what we have is 50 plus 1, 25% more than half of the counties. And you have at least 50 plus 1, 25% more than half of the counties. And you are the first past the post. Yeah. You are accomplished those three, you declare the winner. So where we have reached with our jurisprudence, with the development of our electoral laws, I mean, the observers who are here, all of them, bar none, have said that the process was very open, transparent. Kenyans voted peacefully. The Kenyans themselves are saying, thank you very much. Maybe it wasn't what we wanted, but you know what? We have to go back to work. The only people who seem hell-bent on squeezing, even the politicians themselves are saying, you know what, yes, we will litigate this in court. It's just the opaque four who are still groping in darkness. But, well, once it goes to the Supreme Court, the light shall shine. Then we shall see where it stands. But moving the conversation beyond what happens with the 4 commissioners, we also need to understand where they are coming from. They are new in the commission. This is their first election. They want to make a good impression. They want to look like they are their own persons. Chebukati is exiting. He has a different set of parameters he's dealing with. Chebukati is looking at this like redemption. He wants to deliver such a textbook election that the scourge of the impugned one, the one that had to be struck off, is rubbed off the memory, so that the last taste in Kenya's mouths is Chebukati delivered to us a successful election. So these two guys are pulling from 2 different ends. Others are looking to make a name for themselves, another is looking to clear his name. Yeah. So it would make sense that even when you look at the split, the 3 battle-hardened, seasoned, been through hell and high water together commissioners still stuck together, and the 4 newbies stuck together. Okay. And so now we've gotten to a place where the new patch on the old cloth tore the cloth apart. And I think it's also a lesson to the appointing authorities. Some of these decisions that we make that have maybe a short-term implication on our political expediency may in the long term not do much good for us. Because if they had followed what Kriegler had recommended, and been in office at least 2 years prior to the election, they would have had 2 or 3 by-elections together to sort of pull and push until by the time they're getting the national election, they have gelled into one team. Okay. But see our life.
Franklin.
Yeah. I think it is fair to say both facts and perception matter. Facts because this has headed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will not be looking at perceptions, but will be looking at the facts that used to identify any illegalities or irregularities and determine whether we are into a runoff or we're going to do a do-over or whatever they determine. That is facts and the law, and that is it. It is perception because elections are a political process, and therefore perceptions really matter. For instance, Joy has just said that Chebukati and the 2 commissioners are headed out in January. These 4 others should be part of the 2027 general elections. And then you have to bring in, so will we continue with the perceptions of a split commission? And these are issues that we have to look at from a perception point of view and from a factual point of view, so that we can sort out the issues clearly, so that we can improve on our conduct of elections. The issue of structuring IEBC, the structural deficiencies of IEBC, between Chebukati and between Oswago and
Ezra.
Not Ezra. Oh. Before Ezra. Between Oswago and
Isaac
Hassan. There were issues of structural, challenges between the Secretariat and, looking like you have 2 centers of power. Again, between Ezra and Chiloba, it played out. We haven't yet, it's just that today the personalities possibly of the current CEO, Marjan and Chebukati, are more malleable and calm together than, what we experienced with the other 2 leaderships. And that has still to be sorted. We need to sort out a clear jurisdiction of what is the jurisdiction of the Secretariat and what is the jurisdiction of the Commission. But again, we have a new problem where this Commission is splintering. And these are issues that we have to look at. Election is important, but it's not sufficient to be able to hold this country together and move it forward as a democratic, maturing country. We have to look at these institutional deficiencies. We have to strengthen our processes. Yes, the Kriegler Commission is a good beginning. Yes, the Supreme Court of 2013, which differs from the 2017, one is conjunctive, one is disjunctive, the other is disjunctive. This new Supreme Court has to, come up with its own ruling depending on the facts that will be adduced. But we have to look at, soon after the Supreme Court is done, whether the president-elect will come into office on 30th of August, or whether it will happen on 12th of December, or whether it will happen to go to a runoff or a do-over, and we have to wait until some time in October. Soon after the dust has settled on the presidential elections, we need to sit down as stakeholders, audit this process, and begin planning for 2027. It's an electoral cycle, not an event. And these issues have to be adduced. But I can conclude that it's both perceptive and factual, and you cannot avoid any.
Yeah. Prof, does this all boil down to a structure of governance? Is that where we lost it, whereby the winner takes it all and the opposition is almost relegated, therefore making it almost a do-or-die situation for the political class?
Yeah, BBI was trying to address that in two ways, so that first we bring back an official opposition, so that those who have lost, sometimes if these figures are correct and if they will stand, then Raila was beaten by just 233,000 votes out of millions of voters. Basically, the country is divided into two. So if they are brought back into parliament in some structured way, by way of a really office of the official opposition, etc., etc., that's one of the ways. But there's another better way, which is to reorganize the structure of governance, so that instead of the president and the deputy, you have the president, deputy, prime minister, so that when there's an election, Kenya is facing Kenya. So you have two formations. And by the way, BBI is by default being implemented, because the bone of contention with BBI that the Ruto team didn't want was the issue of VO, positions for people. But in practice, they gave Mudavadi what BBI was proposing. And Raila equally gave it to Kalonzo. So it's like they're agreeing we need prime minister. So that means, therefore, if you have these 5 positions, Kenya will be facing Kenya. You get it? And we have a test of that. Because with Ruto Kalenjin, Rigathi Kikuyu, Mudavadi Luya and Wetangula, Kingi from Coast, Mutua Kamba, Dito Railas, Luo, Kikuyu Mother, Luya Oparanya, Kalonzo Kamba, etc., etc., Joe Coastal, and so on. You see, Kenya is facing Kenya. And that's why you can see the tensions are less, to tell us that BBI was indeed a good thing. But let me say something which Franklin has talked about. And this is what must be considered as we talk about the 4 commissioners. The structure of managing our election is such that the elections are not run by a secretariat. The elections are run by the commission, the commissioners. So the IEBC is the commissioners who have a full-time job. In other countries, the job is done by a secretariat, so that a big country like India can just have 3 commissioners, because theirs is not a full-time job. So to understand this stalemate we have, you must look at the structure of governance of IEBC. It is the commissioners who are running the election and not the secretariat. The secretariat is an employee of the commission, and the commissioners are full-time. You can compare this with a corporation, a state corporation, a parastatal, for example, where, one, the board meets just once and deals with the policy issues and so on. The day-to-day running of the parastatal is by the CEO. But you could have another corporation where we have an executive chairman so that the board has more control. And for example, at the university, we have now changed so that council is no longer just ceremonial. Council is the one now supposed to be doing the actual running of the university. So that's now different from the old council, where council was just to come and meet once, wanakula mandazi na chai, wanapewa allowance, wanaenda. You get, so they are held responsible if anything goes wrong in the universities. Our IBC is run by the commissioners, not the secretariat. Secretariats are mere employees. For that reason, and we must come back to this issue of 4 commissioners. For that reason, even within the Supreme Court, a dissenting 4 out of 3 will present a major challenge to Jepkati in the Supreme Court. Because it is IBC that's running the election. It is IBC by law that processes the election, giving the results to Chepkat to announce. Chepkat does not process the election. No, the election is processed by IEBC. He's announcing the product given to him by IEBC. So if that IEBC has a majority of the commissioners telling him what you are doing is wrong, we don't agree, even before you go into the substance, which is where people of CPA will be and the lawyers, even before you go to the substance, there is something amiss. And I must finish by saying, it is such a situations we want to avoid as a country, because we could tip over.
So we are back to the perceptions game again, because the law does not say anywhere that they need to agree. Otherwise, then the will of the Kenyan
the lawyers will tell you the law is clear that the decisions of IBC will be either by consensus, and where there's no consensus, the majority will carry that. It is there in black.
But then how does that...
So now the dispute here...
Of the Kenyans.
Some people...
Many people, Prof, who are arguing that if Kenyans voted a certain way and then 3 commissioners agreed with them and 4 dissented, and it is supposed to be a majority issue, then the will of the Kenyans will be subverted by these 4 who have dissented.
So the will of the Kenyans can be subverted in the same way it can be subverted by the Supreme Court. It's a zero-sum argument. Because you can vote in Uhuru Kenyatta and the Supreme Court of 7 people can say no. So once you have institutions, and those institutions have power that you have donated to them, you must allow them to use that power. So an argument against the 4 commissioners would be the same argument about 7 Supreme Court judges. In fact, you need only 4 to subvert, in your argument, the will of the people.
Okay, let me hear what Joy has to say about that subversion of the will of the people. Because really, the Supreme Court doesn't exactly subvert the will of the people. It will just say it wasn't so and so, therefore it's an open race.
No, if you nullify an election, you are telling the people your work was
not
zero.
So and so, we are giving it to so and so. It will say now you go back to the elections and pick again afresh, right?
But that's the same thing.
The section of the law that Professor is talking about is in the Regulations and Elections Act. And it talks about the conduct of the meetings of the commission. And it is referring to when the commission is conducting its business, that it will seek consensus in its decisions, and if consensus is impossible, then it will go to a vote. This does not include the election, because the election is not normal commission business. The election is the Article 1 of the Constitution, the power belonging to the people and the supremacy of the people in selecting their representatives. When Kenyans speak, IEBC is the microphone that amplifies the voice of the Kenyan people. The microphone has no sound of its own. It depends on the sound of the person holding it to take out anything and broadcast it. And that's what the IEBC does. And so even in this instance, when I listen to Prof and he says that those 4, if they do not agree, then they take a vote and the majority decision wins, is exactly where I was going to go with the question that you asked in your follow-up. Therefore, if the 4 do not agree with the outcome, the numbers at the bottom of the page, and they say, you know what, we see these numbers, but we don't like them, then all of Kenyans will be held hostage because 4 commissioners are not happy. How is that a thing? I'm telling you, let me give you a small juxtaposition. When Honorable Uhuru and Ruto won power first time in 2013, Dr. Mutunga is one of those people who was vehemently opposed to them running because they were inductees at the ICC. But when the rubber met the road and they were elected, he had to stand there as Chief Justice and administer the oath of office to both of them, even though his personal opinion was that they were not qualified because they were inductees of the ICC. But because the Kenyan people spoke and selected them as their leaders, he put his personal opinions aside and did what the law required him to do. It's the same situation with these commissioners. Like I said, the only way I would stop and listen to what is being said by the commissioners is if they offered us an alternative to what we have. If what we have is what is on the portal, is what we have observed, is what Chebukati has arrived at, and they have nothing different to offer, then why would the Supreme Court interfere with that? Because the threshold, remember, when you file an election petition, this has been settled not just in the Supreme Court, but even in the lower courts as they've been handling election petitions. You must prove several things. That one, indeed, there are irregularities. Second, you cannot talk about general irregularities. The second thing you must do is tell us where the irregularities were. So tell us it was in police station 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is where we saw the irregularities. 3, you tell us how those irregularities and the subsequent outcome would have been different had the irregularities not been there.
That's wrong.
So you have, just let me finish my point, then you come back with your brand of the law. Once you have told us that I have looked in this, this, and that polling station, and if these had been retallied in this way, I would have been the winner and not so and so. When you prove those, then you have to show how it is not just the fault of the person that was declared the winner, but that the IBC, and that's why the IBC is a mandatory, you must sue the IBC whenever you are in an election petition, is because it is them who facilitate the error, or made the error, or overlooked so where somebody else made the error. Then to force them, therefore, to either correct the error or to do the thing afresh. So you can either order a recount, a retally, or you order a rerun, depending on the outcome of the situation. So even in this instance, it's not enough to just say there are 4 commissioners who have dissented. You have to show how that dissent affected the outcome of the election. And if the weight has affected the outcome of the election, then the Kenyan people, their voice was not heard in this general melee. In this instance, I think they would struggle with that. Because from the get-go, one of the consequences of the last election petition is that one of the criticism was that the commission did not make the Form 34As public to begin with. And what Chebukati did from day one, what the commission did from day one, they provided a portal and they said everything will be put there. Before even the election, I'm sure your media house was invited, as I was as a member of the civil society, and we saw simulations, not once, but twice, of how these transmissions will take place, which portal to go to, and that's where most of us were drawing, even your own tally, you are drawing the results from that same portal. So in this particular instance, I'm left at a loss as to what the total sum of this game is. Because if it is not to interpret what the Kenyan people said on August 9th, I don't know what else is.
Okay, Franklin.
Trevor, from where I sit, I think we're in a very good position as a country. The fact that Honorable Raila Odinga has indicated he's headed to the Supreme Court is a good thing. We have had the court look at the 2 previous elections, and it is a good tradition that we're establishing. And after that, we have seen that the politicians generally and Kenyans generally agree with the results of the verdict of the Supreme Court. We have had challenges before in terms of the neutrality, the professionalism, and the conduct of the security apparatus. On this occasion, we must really congratulate them for doing a good job to make sure that everyone is safe and the process went on well. We're seeing other institutions, the National Security Advisory Council, the Office of Assumption to the Office of the President's Committee, undertaking their constitutional mandates very well. I don't see any problem by President Uhuru Kenyatta having supported one of the candidates. He is calm. He's allowed the process to go on, and I'm certain that he will be gentleman enough to appear at the swearing-in day and hand over the Constitution and the sword. I think we are seeing, independent bodies, constitutional commissions, and government agencies acting based on what is required by the rule of law. And I think we're in a good place. We must be able to move this process forward. I want us to focus on, as the Supreme Court looks at, does its work around the presidential elections, let us look at who did we elect in the county assemblies. I think that is where we have a huge turnover, and see who are going to offer us this good leadership. We have seen a lot of transition from National Assembly, from the Senate, to county governments. We need to look at the composition of the National Assembly, look at the composition of the Senate, and begin asking ourselves, how do we make sure that there's going to be proper political accountability for the new leadership, whether it will be the president-elect or whether there will be a difference. We need to be able to ask Uhuru Kenyatta to begin cooperating in terms of the handover, and I don't see and foresee any challenge. Here, he was a politician. He's still a politician. He was bound, even in the United States. Barack Obama supported his candidate, Hillary Clinton, but he handed over power to the candidate he didn't like, Donald Trump. And we need to see that there's that maturity, and I'm happy from where I sit. Going forward, how do we enhance this institutional performance? Yeah. How do we enhance these democratic institutions in a way that 2027 will be much better than 2022?
But should we rethink the governance structure, Franklin? Because most people are saying the reason why this is such a do or die is because there's no official office of the opposition, there's no scorecard for them, there's nothing really. In fact, the president-elect himself, Dr. William Ruto, said that he doesn't even believe in this whole handshake business. He says the opposition should play their role. But there's no scorecard, there's no official office, there's no PACs that comes with it.
So about 12 years ago, we gave ourselves a new constitution, I think by about 62, 63%. And we have had attempts, not one, over 15 times to amend the current constitution. The latest being the President and Honorable Raila Odinga through the BBI process. The court has since given us, the apex court, has since given us, clarified the process of who and how to amend the constitution. Any Kenyan moved by the need to amend the constitution, there is an avenue. Let us make those proposals. We have a hung parliament, you know. We will have to reasonably make reasoned arguments. We will have to be bipartisan to make sure that we amend. And that is where I stand. There is the law. If you don't like it, find legal ways to change it. Okay. As it stands, that is what we gave ourselves. We gave ourselves a presidential system. We gave ourselves a legislature that is independent. And that has been blurred a bit by the way the cabinet appointments are done. We gave ourselves two-third gender rule. We need to work on that. We gave ourselves various things that we still need to work on to improve on our governance. And that is where we should invest our energies on. Kenyans need to start asking the governors they elected. We have a governor in Nairobi that is not facing any petition. And we need to start asking him the questions. What are we going to do so that this city can be improved? There's so many elections that are not challenged. There are no petitions expected. So that is where we should focus: political accountability, democratic performance, performance of institutions, strengthening of democratic institutions, making sure that there's proper participation of the people and citizen engagement. That is where our energy should be invested, and other institutions protected to do their work in a good way.
Okay, let me bring up some of the feedback, and then we talk about these appointments of that are coming up. Either way, one way or another, whether the Supreme Court case goes one way or another, someone will be appointing someone at some point. Let's see what you're saying here. Isaac Mudusi says the returning officer for the presidential election remains chairperson of IEBC and not commissioners. Only Wafula Chebukati can and declare the president-elect. People should learn to accept defeat. Okay, let's see what else you're saying here. Bobotino says, on a scale, I give IBC 8 out of 10. In a competition, there's a winner and a loser. A referee can't satisfy all competitors. Okay. Chalowood Rosie says, let the Supreme Court decide. Elections malpractices should not be allowed in Kenya. 2017 presidential election was nullified because of that. Let the rule of law be followed to the latter. Okay? Let's see what else you're saying. Masika says, what keeps Kenyans thrilled is that there's tranquility in corners and everyone can therefore go out and tend to their business. However, the squabbles amongst IEBC commissioners speaks volumes on the credibility of the announced results. Let's not take things lightly when we converse, okay? Khan says, IEBC did a good job, thumbs up, save for the last phase, the actual counting and determining the winner. But why is it that the summations of the leading candidates were not progressively made public by IEBC on the screen at Bomas? Okay. Prof, let's now talk about these appointments, and you had mentioned it earlier on. We've always seen where the winning political side tends to appoint they're either political losers, people who are rejected by the electorate, or people who are perceived to be party loyalists. Is that where our other problems begin? Should that be fixed?
Yeah, just to, before I answer that in a second, to point out to the lawyer here is that the Maraga court made a major departure from the Mtunga court in terms of quality versus quantity. So according to Maraga court, it was enough to cite irregularities and illegalities. And it didn't matter whether that could have changed the outcome or not. They said because it's a process. It is the quality of the election and not the quantity. So even if that wouldn't make any material difference on the outcome, they'll still nullify the election. I think just to correct her a bit. You see, what you are raising is a very important issue, and I've raised it many times. This country is suffering. This country is hurting. There's pain all over. I know many of us in Nairobi here in our suits, we rarely go to the villages. If you ever took 2 weeks to stay in your home village, you'll be depressed. The sort of suffering people are going through, scrapping through life. The people who are dying in the villages because of very simple disease, things that you could mitigate by just attending to a clinic, just going to a hospital. It is bad, and therefore, forming government must be something you don't take casually. World over, Trevor, people who win must reward cronies, must reward people who propped them up, people who finance their elections, people who support. But this is not the time to go in that direction. In this country, we have this bad habit of recycling leaders, of going to the same families. If you go to Busia, it will be the Moody family, you get somebody from there. If you go to Kishi, it will be a Nyachai family, and so on and so forth. If any of the people who might become president, whoever it is that will become president, now that it is disputed, continues with business as usual, this country will collapse in their hands. This country is at a stage where you need the best men and women to give the job. Whatever job there is, whatever task and whatever assignment, if it is Ruto or Raila, most likely whatever it is, they must know business as usual will not work for this country, where we are today. You must identify the best men and women, even as you reward cronies and friends and financiers. Make the majority of your appointees be people who can help you get this country from where it is, because we don't have any luxury of time or playing around with appointments. So I expect that out of a cabinet of 22, Raila or Ruto would perhaps have 6 at the very most for cronies. And the remaining 16 must be men and women you are sure can help you salvage this country from where it is.
Yeah. Joy, that's also another issue that you raised, that Kenyans are looking to move on. They have so many things coming up. The education system itself is still a matter of contest, but we've seen it before. Every time a political party comes into power, they appoint the people who are deemed loyalists. Is this the point where we need a radical shift and pick people who can actually do the job rather than having political appointments? Because then there's a massive in-tray, high cost of living, debt ceiling rising, there's education to be done with.
Again, before I go there, I don't know why today Professor is hell-bent on insisting that I do not know what I'm talking about. The Maraga decision, when he pronounced himself on the date of the petition, he did not read the full judgment. He did say that they saw illegalities and irregularities that rendered them, or lent them the mind that the election was not run properly and therefore should be cancelled. And then they proceeded to nullify it. But he also indicated that they're going to give a reasoned judgment at a later date, which they did. In that reasoned judgment that they offered at a later date, the things that they pointed out is that, one, the election itself is a process, is not an event. Two, they said the election itself must be transparent. It must deliver a credible result. The credible result must be verifiable, and the same must be communicated in a way that all the stakeholders can appreciate and understand. That is what influenced how Chebukati ran this election this time. So first and foremost, the commission was at pains once the election started to try and give the Kenyans access to information from the earliest opportunity. When else have we ever had results from the polling station uploaded up for us to see before 24 hours? That's something that has never happened before. This was a direct result, and even that is one of the criticisms that Honorable Raila made when he said he was going to court, was that the law says Form 34A should be published in a portal run by the IBC Commission. This said in 2017, and the IBC has not done so. In this election, that's the very first thing the Commission did. The second thing was the issue of verification. So in previous days, what used to happen is that the Constituency Tallying Center, the Form 34B that was prepared by the county returning officer, is what would just be brought to Chebukati or whoever the chairman commission is, and he would tabulate that. This time round...
The 34As.
No, the 34B. He would tabulate from the 34B to generate the 34C. This time round, yes, they brought the 34B, but that Form 34B was scrutinized as against the physical Form 34As to ensure that the veracity of the Form 34B is verifiable as against. This is a direct result of the criticism from last time, because they were asked, so how did you trust the results that you were given from the Form 34B? Because the criticism at that time is that some of those Form 34Bs had been doctored to reflect results that did not come from the ground. The third thing that they did is they upheld the Maina Kiai position that the result in the polling station is the final decision. And so even in this verification, if there was a variance between the Form 34B and the Form 34A, what was contained in the Form 34B was discarded, what was in the Form 34A was upheld, and the Form 34B was amended to align with what was on the Form 34A. And over and above that, any such variance was recorded in an incident report that the IBC right now is in possession of, each and every single amendment that was made to any Form 34B before the Form 34C was generated. This is a direct result of the 2017 decision. Chebukati had like 2.5 years, when he had no work, no commissioners, no nothing, to sit and study that result. And you could see when the exam came, he knew his answers. He had dotted all his I's and crossed all his T's. That's why the process turned out to be so vastly, for many of us, like for me included, it was actually a pleasant surprise that just how the commission seemed to be ready, while all of us were thinking, these guys have had such little time, maybe they're not ready. It seems that some thought had gone into it, informed with what happened before in the 2017 decision. So to your question, in terms of appointments, it is expected that election losers find their refuge in appointments. Those who are the product of handshakes and negotiations of you step down for Joy so that Franklin can take this. So if Franklin succeeded and Joy is the one who stepped down, Joy is expecting that there is an appointment somewhere. If you are also maybe a very strong candidate and something happened and you did not make it through, or you are supportive of the party, this is where serikali ni kubwa, kila mtu anapata nafasi. So that is what is expected. What I would urge, and what, in fact, Professor has correctly alluded to, is sometimes some of these appointments are done and they sacrifice quality over other extraneous issues. And when that happens, you end up with people who you would say you end up with round pegs and square holes. People who don't fit in their job, they don't know what they're doing, they've been elevated to the level of incompetence, and the incompetence becomes the bane of the existence of all Kenyans, because we've got somebody in a job and they don't know what to do. So one of the things that I would expect this time around, because the President-elect Ruto does not have the burden of you know, what the others had. You have a handshake, or you've got a situation where your coalition partners already have a stake. Everybody knew what they were getting into when they came into this game. And there's a reason why UDA ticket was a UDA ticket and the others were playing fringe. Because he's standing back in a position where he's got the 22 cabinet positions. He has to fill with people, take full responsibility for government. The coalition partners who came together with, whatever they negotiated, even them, they know you are supposed to deliver this, then you get this. I guess now they're going to read the percentages. Ulifikisha 70%. So aka ulikuwa unataka tatu zoe sasa unapata moja. So I would expect that that would happen. But at the end of the day, it's not just about rewarding party loyalists. It's also about having people in the ship or people behind you in battle who are ready to be under your command. Because there's nothing worse than you're in charge and you're trying to run a ship, a tight ship, and it's your own sailors who are your saboteurs. So usually you would find party loyalists and other people who can be trusted to deliver the job will take precedent, but also it is a means of culling those who are deemed to be too attached to the previous regime to be trusted to deliver a good job. So there are those who will fall by the wayside simply because in this particular divide, there's some bridges that were burnt, and there's no going back. So there'll be, you know what, boss, maybe you still had 2 more years on your contract, but I want your resignation now because I don't see how you and I, the position is untenable. So it's a way of giving party loyalty something, but it's also a way of ensuring that the person who comes in has got people who will move with his agenda and not do like Lot's wife and keep looking back. Okay.
Frankly, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are, but I have to take a quick break. I'll be back with your thoughts just in a short while. Let's take that quick break. Let's see your views also coming in at Trevor Mbija, Citizen TV, Kenya. See you shortly.